Thanks, everyone. This is another Tuesday edition of the Alignable Technology Industry Group Lunch and Learn. We do this on very often a monthly basis where we have members of the group who are experts in various aspects of technology volunteer the time to share some of that knowledge and experience with us. Welcome again. My name is William McBorer. I am the volunteer group leader of the Alignable Technology Industry Group. Within the group, we try to create an environment that allows technology companies, technologists to get together and create a space for collaboration, to learn from each other, to grow in our respective areas, and to build relationships that can lead to more productivity, more innovation, more business, right? So today I'm privileged to be joined by Matt Duffield. Matt is an expert in software development, product development, artificial intelligence. And I'll give Matt an opportunity here to introduce himself, to preview the hour, and I'll just step out of the way. So Matt, welcome. We certainly appreciate you making the time. I know that this is the first of potentially several of these events with you where you share your expertise with us. So again, appreciate you. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you. So let me share my screen so I can share my slides. All right. If you'll just give me a thumbs up that you can actually see my screen. Things okay? Okay.
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay, excellent. So again, we are going to be discussing Gemini Nano, which is a very small large language model that Google has introduced into browsers. Before I even get started with the slides, though, I want to actually direct everybody so that they know how to get Chrome Canary or Chrome Dev so that they can download that while I'm doing these first initial slides, and then we'll walk through the next step. So I'm going to jump over here to my browser. If you go to google.com Chrome Canary, you can download it. I'm on a Mac, but you can get it either for Windows or Mac. If you prefer not to have Canary, you can also grab Dev. It just depends on which flavor you want. It's google.com Chrome Dev or google.com Chrome Canary. And I can paste these into the chat if you guys would like that. If I can find where my chat went. 1 second here. How do I find that? Everything went away. Here we go. All right, here is Canary, and I will give you guys also Dev in case you want. You don't need both, just one or the other. So while I'm continuing to do the talk, just go ahead and pull one or the other down, and then you can follow along with what we're going over. This discussion really is going to be about how we can take and leverage the power of Gemini Nano. There are so many large language models out there that are very large, which the LLM implies that they're pretty big. But this is something very different. And I'm very happy that Google has done this. In fact, there's a lot of articles right now that are being posted praising Google for doing this. And I know that with the browser wars, the rest of them are going to fall in suit. Apple has done that because of their embedding things into the phones and into the iPads. So it's just a matter of time that we'll have this and it will be ubiquitous. The biggest thing or the biggest difference here is the fact that this is actually baked into the browser, and we'll discuss that more as I continue. Just a quick info about myself. I went to Clemson University where I got a degree in computer science. I also got another degree in modern languages. I'm actually originally from Colombia, South America. And so I speak Spanish fluently, but I was adopted when I was really young. So I didn't remember all of my Spanish. So I wanted to get a degree in it and have both the best of both worlds. I've worked as a software architect, as a data warehouse architect, focusing heavily on business intelligence, a database administrator. I've been a Microsoft MVP 5 times, worked as trainer, and I'm on my 5th book that I'm authoring. I try to stay as current with IT if it's possible. It's always changing. But one of the biggest things to me that I really enjoy is the fact that we have AI now like baked in via these large language models. And just to give everyone a reference of where we've come from, I was the chief architect at Charlotte Radiology back in the 2006-2008 period. And we were tasked with designing and architecting a classification and a prediction model for ICD-9, ICD-10, and CPT, common procedure terminology. And basically, what we were trying to do is what was available in the ecosystem back then at that time. We were a Microsoft shop, so we were using Microsoft C Sharp. We needed to use something that understood or allowed us to do machine learning. And back then, there were no real major products or tools that could satisfy that. However, Microsoft was one of the first to introduce this capability in their product called SQL Server Analysis Services. And we could actually add training sets to that. But that wasn't the full solution. We also had to author or write our own implementations of naive Bayes, decision tree, K-cluster algorithms in order to help us with the classifications and the predictions. We used a tool out of England called General Architecture for Text Engineering. It was a Java implementation, and it was heavily focused on the concept of NLP, or natural language processing. One of the things that you find, especially back then when you were trying to do machine learning, was the fact that not everyone speaks the same way. Not everyone dictates. And since we're talking about radiology, we were talking about like X-rays, MRIs, CAT scans. And you could have a radiologist speak that was raised in the Northeast. The Southeast could be another radiologist, the Midwest, out here in the West where I'm located. And each of them would say things completely different, but it would be the same terminologies. For example, if they were going to do an X-ray of the chest, they could say one view of the chest, or one view of the thorax, or thorax one view. They completely mixing and matching the words and how they do their diction. And that's where NLP comes in, or natural language processing. We still use it, but it was extremely important for us back then because it helped us get rid of what we call stop words. We could do stemming, another concept called lemmatization, and really help break down the semantical meaning of the way the person dictates. When we were working on this project, there were several products out there that would offer this, and they were very expensive, $2-3 to do classifications per report. And if you just can imagine what a hospital system would be doing, Charlotte Radiology service multiple hospitals, how expensive that could get. And there was a product called CodeWrite, and what it did is it trained its machine learning model at a national level. And if you can imagine trying to train a generic model where they didn't take into consideration the way radiologists would dictate the different nuances, the different things, the accuracy was very low. It was about 65%. Our approach was completely different, where we wanted to do machine learning training per physician or per radiologist, which required a lot more data, but at the same time made our accuracy almost like 95, 97%. So just trying to provide a little bit of background of what you needed to do. And then we used something called human in the loop for feedback. And that was in our SQL Server Analysis Services database, because machine learning and because it's basically just statistics, we needed to do some sort of reinforcement. If the prediction was invalid, it got a false positive or a false negative. We needed to allow the RCC, or the radiology certified coder, to be able to go in and highlight the corpus or the document that was dictated, and then reinforce the learning, saying this is the correct word, that then classifies it with the according to ICD-9, ICD-10 code, or the CPT code, depending on what it was trying to classify. So these were very important techniques that we needed to do, but there's nothing in here that is generative. There's nothing in here that was AI that was taking it and using an inferencing model. This was all just pure statistics where we were building these training sets. It required usually 6 to 9 months of data of specific radiologists, as well as reports, in order for to build it. And dating yourself or going back in time, this was the only way to do things as far as doing machine learning. Now, as we move forward, and I just want to make sure as we continue going through here that everyone has been able to download the corresponding Chrome, Canary, or Dev, and that there's no issues. If you do have an issue, just please put it in the chat and I'll address it as I see it, but I'll continue. Differences between non-generative AI and generative AI. I really was just describing machine learning, which is non-generative AI, but you'll see that the way that we did it traditionally was just highly based on statistics. You could literally skew things just by adding more weights to a specific prediction or a specific training set that you had. The nice thing about it is that had the ability to retrain and improve your model real time. And what I mean by that is that the the user, the customer service rep, or whoever was actually using the tool could highlight, could hit submit, and it would immediately go into the database. And the next time you would run a prediction or a classification, it would then absorb that new training set and be able to handle doing that prediction. That's slightly different than the way generative AI works, and we'll discuss that in a second. And then non-generative always required a traditional training set. You actually had two. You would have a training set, and then you would have your test set that would go against that. Your training set would typically be, this is the end result that I want to have, so that when I try to do classifications, predictions, I can then base off of the training set, do my predictions work? Are they accurate? What do I need to do to adjust the model in order to make it more accurate? Now, if we shift forward to generative AI, this is completely different, where we're using more of an inferencing engine. And we basically are looking at data from GitHub repositories, articles, artistry work, whether it's videos, songs, images, paintings, whatever it is. And we're building this huge large language model that can inference off of that. And when we start talking about other things outside of text, then we call that multimodality, meaning that the AI is so good that it can actually not only do text, but it can do image creation, video creation, song creation, other things than that. What we will be focusing on is just a single modality, which is text generation. But it's extremely fascinating how they've been able to do that. But it's what I would call a shotgun approach. They're taking a bunch of data, whether it's good or bad, whether it's biased or non-biased, and it's building that model on top of it. The problems with that is that you still need to have some sort of NLP practice to help it find meaning. And what I mean by that is, if you ever want to extend it, it's only good on the language and the base that it was trained on, and it can do inferencing. But if you've trained it on only data that comes from the Northeast, and now you want to train it on data from the Southeast, the way we speak, the way we talk, the way we write, it's completely different. And not so drastically, but then if you go to Australia, New Zealand, England, and I'm only focusing on English spoken languages or countries that primarily speak that, which a lot of them do, South Africa, you're going to find that the model starts to degrade because of how good or bad it is based off of that. We also have a very difficult time to retrain and improve models at real time. It takes hours, and it takes mega CPU, mega servers to create these large language models. They're massive. It's super expensive, that we're talking about billions and billions of parameters and tokens that it uses. So this is not something that you could just go back and just, okay, let me just have an instance of SQL Server or a database, add a few things, and it magically starts working. This requires a lot of money and knowledge and hardware in order to do that. In fact, one of the reasons why video cards stocks have risen so highly is because of the dawn of AI. It needs that GPU. In fact, we now have a dedicated from Apple, the TPU, and Microsoft for the TPUs, where they're now dedicated AI processors moving forward. So very expensive. But with that knowledge, the architects and the designers of using AI decided we need to do something in order to make ourselves still efficient. Not everyone can afford doing the traditional training model. So they implemented something, or created something called retrieval augmented generation, which allows us to provide extra data or metadata via vector embeddings, so that the large language model can be pointed and say, hey, I have a question and I want to ask it very specific about something. One of the biggest issues that AI had when it was first introduced, and it's still an issue, was that maybe its training set was only good until like October 2022. Anything after that, you try to ask it a question, is I don't know. So you can then use RAG technologies and implementations to provide extra data. That's one approach that they have. They also have something called low rank adaptation, or LoRa, which allows us to make adjustments of very small segments, specifically for verticals, healthcare, insurance, manufacturing, finance, and you can do adjustments so that it becomes more of a expert system instead of I'm a jack of all trades. And then finally, they use something called agents, and this typically is outside of the large language model for agents and chaining. Lane chain is probably the most popular one out there. What that allows you to do is basically have what we would call an orchestrator or a traffic cop. When you first enter your query or your prompt, this orchestrator will look and say, hey, does the large language model have training, have enough information on this? If not, I'm going to tell it to go and ask Google or search the web or search any other content that I've made available through my implementation. And if that is satisfied, maybe I'll have it actually do another couple set of things, code generation for writing software. These implementations have been brought in because of how expensive it is to create and build your own large language models. And this is just really a high level picture of how things work between the traditional, non-generative, and then the generative. We are going to be discussing today just pure large language model. It's actually an expert model, which I'll mention in a second. There's no RAG to this. The next session, we will actually be training it on our own personal data or company data, and we'll be able to ask the AI questions about our company, and it will not hallucinate. It will actually answer those questions, and we'll use techniques for that. Okay, so why would we even want to use Gemini Nano? There are so many large language models out there that you get inundated. ChatGPT, Meta, Llama, Microsoft, they all have their own tweak or implementation of these, but they all come at a cost, right? Number one, if you use any of these very large language models, you're having to enter in your query into a browser or into a system where it's now going across the web and hitting servers, which they may or may not be training against. Most of them are if you're using the free models. And so now your proprietary data is no longer proprietary. It's now being shared with whoever you're using. That's a big negative aspect to it. And a lot of companies and corporations do not want that. They want their own on-premise LLM, if you will, and they don't want that data ever being shared. With Gemini Nano, you could completely run it in the browser, and you can actually turn off network activity in the browser so that it doesn't go anywhere. It's always your data. It's always meant for you. You can open up as many tabs as you want or windows as you want, and it doesn't incur the download time of a model. The large language models that we're going to be using within Gemini Nano is about 1.2 gigs, which is actually pretty small when we actually think in terms of how big some of these models are. Your data, your prompts, your conversations, all of these stay on your device. From an architectural perspective, if you want to scale, you have a solution, you're like, man, we want to get this to all of our clients. If you were going to go through Google, Amazon, Azure, and any of the cloud providers, and you wanted to use an LLM, it would be extremely expensive because you would have to have these mega servers that could run the GPUs in the cloud. And every time you're getting hit by all of your clients, you incur that cost where it's being metered, and that becomes really expensive. This model, you no longer have any cost or any offset. The reason for that is because all of the computation now is being offset to the browser. So it's now on clients. So you can scale as big as you want, and there's no extra overhead. You still need a little bit of programming savvy to know how to build your queries and stuff like that. But for the most part, the biggest advantage of this is that scaling, there's no cost or no extra cost, at least for hardware. Expensive servers no longer are an issue, but there's also a cost to this. I'm painting a really rosy picture. These are very small large language models. And so they're not going to be write me a novel. They're not going to be something that can satisfy and write all of your code until they start adding in more expert systems. And I'll explain that a little bit more. Models are considered expert models. And what I mean by that is there's a prompt model right now that is an expert at understanding text for converting prompts. There's another model that handles writing. So if you want to write a letter, you want to do like a cancellation notice or whatever it is your company is doing, you can have it generate that for you. You can have a rewriter where you actually submit your corpus and it'll rewrite it for you. There's a summarization API that they have that will take whatever content that you provided and it will summarize that for you. There's a translation API, which right now I think they support 5 languages: Spanish, German, French, Italian, Japanese, and its sole focus is handling those. And so you would, as you're writing your implementation or your solution for your company or contracting somebody to do this, you would want to make sure that they're using the right models. Google has been really good about this because they're actually creating these expert models, which are small and laser focused for that. Again, their sizes are a lot smaller than these full LLMs, but they're not No longer can you do the shotgun approach and just ask one single massive GPT-4o any type of question or any type of modality, create me an image, write me a song or something like that. These models won't do it generatively or universally. You'll have to pick an expert model that will be introduced over time. With that said, this is definitely the future. Organizations, enterprises are demanding security. They don't want their data to go across the wire. They want to leave it within their infrastructure. They want to be able to have a closed infrastructure if possible. They want to be able to scale and not end up paying all of their profit back to the server and the hardware. So those are some of the biggest things that the reason why Gemini Nano would be so important for us. Okay, so here's one of the biggest caveats with this is what do I need to have on my architecture or my system to run it? You need to either have Windows 10 or 11 or Mac 13 and above, OS 13. There needs to be at least 22 gigs in your Chrome profile so it can download models. And you're not going to use that much information unless you start going in and playing with the language models for translations, because each direction, so English to Spanish to English is a single model. But if you want to go to any other language, Google has really, in my opinion, done this smartly. If I never need to do Italian translations, if I never need to do German translations, I don't want my browser, I don't want my footprint to be overheaded. And again, if we're thinking about scaling this out, you don't want your customers to have, why are we forcing them to install a German model if we're never using it? So I like this, but this is one of the things that they have as a requirement. You need an integrated GPU or a dedicated video card. Obviously, any laptop or desktop will have that if you're going to be connecting to a monitor. And then the video card, they recommend that it has at least 4 gigs of RAM so that it can process this. Again, think about this from the context that you're actually running this on the device that the client is logging into your website or browsing to your website. Okay, hopefully up until now, you guys have been able to get Chrome downloaded, and whether it was Canary or Dev. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to walk us through all the steps that we need to. I'm going to actually post this first link into the chat just so you guys have it. This is the early adopter program, and all the content that I'm sharing with you guys, you will have access to. Google recommends this as far as if you have questions. Once you become an early adopter, there is a Google Groups private channel that you can ask any question concerning Nano as well as concerning their full Gemini solutions. But if you want, you can click on this and sign up and get a little bit more information. You also need to ensure that as long as you haven't downloaded Canary or Dev, that you have the latest versions. But what I want to do now is just walk us through what we need to do to turn things on. So I have over here the Chrome flags. If we can see it, there's a Chrome flags. And what we're going to want to do is, I'll paste this as well, this optimization guide on device model. And we're going to want to turn this on in our Chrome flags. And again, I'm hoping that you guys already have Canary or Dev installed. You're going to want to find, and I already have a bunch of them turned on, but you're going to want to find and just do a search for, what is the optimization? This guy here. And when you find it, you're going to want to do enable bypass perf requirements. If you just do enable, that may not trigger everything that you need. And when you do this, things, it may take a while for it to actually download the model, which we'll look at under components in a second. This is the first flag that we need to turn on. And there's one more flag. Let me jump to the next slide. And I'm going to just leave it like this for now, just so that I can show you the browser. The next flag is prompt API for Gemini Nano. So if we go back to our browser and we say prompt API, you want to have this guy enabled as well. These are the two flags that are required in order for this solution to work in the browser. And we're going to do one more step to actually kick off the download of the large language model or of Nano, Gemini Nano. Once we have those, I'm going to open up a dev tool, which means it can be any browser, but let me just open up a generic browser. I'm just going to go down to inspect, and this is in Chrome. So the very Chrome that you're in, the Canary, either Chrome Canary or Chrome Dev, and I'm going to go to the console. and I'll just paste this code. So let me just copy this. And I'm going to paste it in the chat as well, so you guys have it. Did I get all of that? Seems like I put a U before that. I apologize. Let me do that again. I add that. Okay. When we have this and I paste it in here, if everything has been installed, it will give you readily. If not, you're going to get a message saying pending or something like that. And to confirm it, we can go to components. Let me just copy this for you. And you can confirm that you have the model installed. It will be optimization guide on device model. This may or may not show up. And I've just executed the await in the console multiple times. It'll probably take 5 or 10 minutes for it to actually download, depending on how fast your network is. So what you want to see though is readily. When you see that, you're completely 100% ready. Your system will be ready. And I just want to throw out there too, this is the only reason why we're going through all of these extra exercises is because this is still like a beta. We're doing this behind flags and we're doing this behind Chrome Canary or Chrome Dev. Obviously, when we get out of the early adopter program and it becomes first class citizen, it'll just be available for all instances of Chrome and your clients won't have to do any of this. Right now, if I have clients when I'm doing this, I either try to set them up and walk them through it, or I try to make sure I can configure their image for their laptop or their desktop so that all of this is taken care of for them. Okay, let me move on. If there's any questions, please ping me or let me know. I don't see any chat, except for me talking. So just want to make sure everyone's okay so far. All right. So this is going to be what we are going to build and when I say what we're going to build, I'm going to have you guys download the solution for it so that you can just follow along how to use it. But I'm going to go ahead and do the demo really quick. And I'm just going to ask, what's the state of Oregon, since that's where I'm living, at the capital of Oregon. So I'm going to refresh my browser just to make sure. And obviously it's not running. So let me get it running. Give me 1 second. I need to make sure. Oh, I closed it. I apologize if I'm jumping through. I just tested this to make sure it works and then I broke it. So fault. Where is my, here it is. Okay. Yeah. Okay, excellent. As you can see here, I now have the server running. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to type in what is the capital of Oregon. And the first time you have it running, if you haven't run it in an hour or so, it actually has to wake up the model. But then it's going to give you the capital of Oregon is Salem. We're going to go through a bunch of questions and prompts that I'm going to just show you. And I actually have a part of the model, but I want to get you guys configured now. So let me paste this in here. If you guys go to this URL, this is where all of the code is. Oh, it keeps doing that. Let me get rid of that U. There we go. And that's going to be this location right here. If you don't have an account with GitHub, there's no problem. When you see this, you should be able to, and let me just make sure I'll do an incognito. This link works. It should. Good. So this is what you're going to see. If you click on the code button, the drop down, you can just go down here and say download zip. What this will have will be all of the code that you see here in it. I'll just go ahead and do it really quick just so you can see. Yeah, why not? And now if I expand it, did it go? Downloads. You're going to see this folder structure where it has an index, which is our website page, a README file, which is basically what we're seeing all of this here. And then you'll have some information. Resources will be our slides. And then a little bit of JavaScript that actually runs the page so that it knows how to do the prompting. And we'll review that in a second, but just want to make sure you guys can access this. Again, you would click on this button, from the button, it will then open up. You do not have to have an account to do any cloning, but you can just do download a zip and just extract the zip into whatever folder you want. It doesn't really matter. And then we'll walk through the steps to get everything configured. So do I have a server set up? Yes. So before we do that, I'm just going to walk us through the server setup. If you're on a Mac, you want to open a terminal. If you're on Windows, then you would just want to open a command prompt. And again, you can see all of these steps right here on the repository that I've created, and just pick which one, whether you're Mac or Windows, to set it up, and just go to the path wherever you extracted that folder so that you're inside that folder. And then whether you have Python 3 or Python, Windows and Mac should have those baked in. So you should be able to just run those. Once you have that, then you should have a server that can show us exactly the same thing that I'm seeing here. And it should look exactly the same as this for you. As you're getting that set up, I'm just going to walk through some of the code really quick. This is all it takes to do this page that we're looking at here, where I just have just some HTML referencing just a single bundle of CSS, just so you guys don't have to worry about all of that. And then I'm using the Tailwind syntax, which is why you see all these classes. But the biggest thing is we have this div that shows us all of the content that comes from the large language model or Gemini Nano. And then we have an area for a text area that you could just type in your prompt and then hit go to ask the question. Probably the most complicated part is this little class here, which is actually not very big. We're basically querying where's the input, which is this text area, the button, which is the submit, the container is just what's containing this information. We check to see if the assistant is available. So this is the exact same code that you guys saw earlier of testing to see, is it available or not? Can we use it? And then we run the assistant, which in turn calls the ask prompt. I've commented this out. So if you guys wanted to run it where it actually tries to talk to you like a pirate, you could do that. There's a lot of really cool things through prompt engineering that you can do, even with these small large language models, that kind of make things a lot of fun. But for the most part, you don't need to even worry about what's happening here unless you just want to play with it. It should just automatically work. The other piece that I wanted to show you, let me go back to here, is that there are specific prompts that you can do. And this is the reason why I wanted to be very specific about these are expert models only in specific areas. This is not Gemini Nano, as the name implies, is a really small large language model. It can't handle all of your questions. But if I say, give me a recipe for banana bread, let me ask it that question. It's going to go through and just start building out a recipe for banana bread. So it's pretty amazing what this large language model can do. And this is a lot of code. And again, this is actually just running in my browser from my GPU or my video card, and it's not going anywhere. In fact, let me try. This is where the demo gods will get angry with me or not, but let me just try to disable my internet. So I'm going to go completely offline, and I'm going to refresh my browser. Oops, I can't go offline just yet. So let me, no throttling. I just wanted to clear the browser. Okay, now let me go offline. And I'll say, what is the capital of Utah? And I'm in this network stack. What this means is that if I see anything show up down here, that means it's trying to communicate with the cloud or with the internet, period. So if I hit this, look at that. This is why so many companies are really excited about what Google is doing, is that you can completely go offline. There's a concept in web development called PWA, Progressive Web Apps, and that makes it so that you can actually create a native mobile app or a desktop app and have it completely offline. So say you're flying, say you're on the train and there's no network connectivity where you're going, you can completely still communicate with these smart models because you're just talking to your browser. So This is something that I am very excited about, and I know that other companies are too, with regard to how can they take advantage and use a lot of these things. And again, I know I just did banana bread, but maybe, I don't know, what other, give me a recipe for chocolate chip cookies. I love chocolate chip cookies. And here you have it again. So if all you want with your assistant is to help you in the kitchen, you could literally have an iPad that just points to this page and just type in. And the cool thing about this is this code that I have doesn't do voice to text, but you could easily do something like that and have it converted so that all you're saying is, hey, Jarvis, if you want to pretend you're Iron Man, give me a recipe for this. And it would then come back to you doing this. You can also use the text to speech API that Google already supports, and it could read it back to you and using that API as well. So some really cool things that you could do that you could really feel like you're Tony Stark or something. I don't know. Tony Stark did a lot of recipes, but there's other things. However, I'm showing you the happy path. I'm showing up what it's like when you're in your honeymoon and everything is working out perfectly. That's not always the case. So let me give you an example where this may or may not work. So I'm going to ask this question. What is the capital of Washington? Now, if I ask this to any grade schooler or adult, they're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm just going to refresh this so I can clear the listing here. And if I paste in, what is the capital of Washington? You guys, I'm assuming, would say Olympia for Washington State. But let's see what it says. Oh, man. Okay, I've asked this too many times. I'm curious if you guys enter that question. You have this README. It's on this page, so you can copy these questions. But I kept getting Washington, D.C. It was thinking I was asking about the federal government, and it was saying, oh, Washington, D.C. is already the capital. So it was getting very confused about this. I'm actually happy that it's getting smarter because I've asked this multiple times. And maybe if I tried doing it in a incognito session, it might be a little bit smarter. But these are one of the things that I was having problem with. And so what I had to do is put in state, and I've done it too many times because now it's smart. It knew that I was going to ask that question, or it's remembering to a certain degree, if you want to call it memory. So no, not necessarily am I training the model yet. We will be doing that. And it's not really training. We will be providing a vector embeddings database using IndexedDB in the browser. But because I've asked this question multiple times, the large language model does have a little bit of memory. Google hasn't indicated how much does it have. In fact, at some point, it will actually have what we call a conversation memory. ChatGPT has that, where if you ask a question and then you refer to the answer that it gave you to try to ask that question again, it will remember that. This large language model does not have any of that implemented yet, just because they're trying to make it as light as possible. Give me 1 second. I've got somebody at my door. I apologize. Let me, I'll be right back. I apologize. So we have to be very careful about the questions that we ask the system, whether or not it can handle it. I want to show you a case where it's going to blow up. You won't see it because I'm actually handling that over here with an exception, and I'm catching that. But I try to put the message up in here so you can read what it would do. So let me go back here. I think I have a question that'll blow it up. Yes. So this model is meant for text. It is not meant for doing any type of mathematics. Oh, great. I'm glad that you got it working, Rupam. So if I ask this question and I say, just refresh, perform the following multiplication. In fact, you wouldn't even need to do that with ChatGPT. You could just do 2 times 10. But I'm trying to be specific with my prompt. The model attempted to output text in an untested language and was prevented from doing so. There's actually a model that supports math and science, and they do not have that turned on as an expert model. Let me see. If you were to train this on a large amount of data, would you need space for it? Okay, yes. To a certain degree, yes. The data gets all data that you want to train, if you're going to use vector embeddings, actually get broken down into numbers, and it becomes like a statistical database. We are going to be doing that in the next session, where we're going to be training it on our own. I'm going to make up a fictitious company, Acme, whatever, and provide company hours, address, what products we sell, any marketing information we want, and then we'll interact with that model. But it is not a lot of data. In fact, it's pretty amazing what you can do with just uploading a PDF or a document that you would want to train off of. So I'm hoping I'm answering that question. It's relative to the amount of data that you upload. So if you have a lot of data and you're trying to make it super smart, it's going to take more data or a bigger footprint. And space is only limited to how much space you have on the PC or the laptop, and ultimately the mobile device, because this is where everything is going to available. So being a good citizen or a corporate citizen, because this is really something that you're going to want all your clients to have. You don't want to take too much advantage of it, but at the same time, you do want to have them, give them the ability to go offline. And so you might want to say, hey, listen, in order for you to interact with our training set, it's going to require this much data. Just be aware of that, just so that they do that or they understand that. I don't know what Google will be putting in place too. They may actually have that as part of the implementation. You want to turn on Gemini Nano, this is how much it's going to take. And there may be part of an API saying, if we're going to do our own training set or our own vector embeddings, then the developer is asking for another gig or 500 megs or whatever the number that you may know, so that you could have that extra information and that the customer is not upset saying, why is this taking so much? Yeah. So again, I tried to do this in just simple multiplication. It couldn't handle it. But what's fascinating is, because this is still a large language model, oops, I want to go here. I'm going to ask it this question. What is the circumference of a circle? If it can't do simple multiplication, why would it be able to do this? And this is what's fascinating. Oops, let me ask the question. I just got a formula that helps me understand how to do the circumference of a circle. So the large language model is trained on some standard data that somehow circumference of a circle was defined, and it was trained on that. And so it could give it back to me. But when you try to change its modality of just text and into doing arithmetic multiplication, it breaks down and says, hey, I have not been trained for that. I know that this is an area where what Google's calling these expert models, they're going to get better over time. But this is one area that I think is just funny. And what I've tried to do, at least in the solution that you guys have, is that at least I give you the output saying, hey, I can't handle this. Ask me something else. And maybe I should put that in here. Whenever I see this message, sorry, I can't handle, ask me something else type of thing, just so that the user or whoever you had, if they were trying to interact with your website and they ask, what's 40 times 40, you could at least give them a funny response, because this is really technical, or just there's not a lot of meaning to that to your end user, your client base. But so again, I'm going to jump back to my slides, make sure I don't miss anything. We've talked about how we did this. We actually looked at the sample prompts, played with them. Again, you can grab any of the prompts from the GitHub repository and just scroll down to the bottom where I'm just showing you some. You do not have to only use these. You could put in whatever you want. Just understand that there's certain things that it can handle and certain things that it cannot. And this Lunch and Learn is only focusing on the prompt API. And that's why leads us into the next slide here. What else can Gemini Nano do outside of prompt API? As of today, as of this date, there is the summarization API that I mentioned to you guys, where you can upload corpus or a document and it can summarize it. And TLDR or what is it? TLDR. I don't have enough time. Just give me a summary and it's going to do that. You have a writer API. This one we are offering for clients that want to do cancellation letters, notification letters, reminders, birthday reminders, anything that you want, that you can just say, write me, and you can give what they call tone. Make it playful, make it serious, make it corporate. So it's really cool that they're building out these specialized APIs and these expert models to handle these. The rewriter, I've got a draft, I want you to rewrite it and use this tone. Again, tone is something that's very important. And then the translation API is yet another one, where I got an email in English, translated to Spanish. I've received something in Spanish, translated to English. And those are just two languages that we could do. But you can see the business end up until they've provided this in the browser. You've always had to go through Google Cloud Platform, AWS, Azure, you name your cloud provider, and it's expensive if you try to do live or real-time translation services. So this is something that I'm very excited about because I know that a lot of businesses, they want to support the Spanish speakers or Italian speakers or whoever else you have, but at real time. And you could even interact with your chatbot saying, ask me the questions in Spanish and provide that once they have it fully integrated with the prompt API. So I'm very excited about that. What's next? I know I got 6 minutes, 5 minutes. So in the next session, if there's anybody that wants to continue, we're going to be doing a session on retrieval augmented generation, which all that means is we're going to upload our own data. I'm going to just use a fictitious company, and what it's going to do behind the scenes is create a vector embeddings database, which is using IndexedDB. All browsers have IndexedDB, and we will then use a little bit of natural language processing. So I get rid of stop words. I'll do some limitizations, some stemming, and I'm using third-party libraries. So there's nothing that I'm having, or you're not going to have to see a lot of code. And then you'll be able to ask questions through your prompt, but this time you'll be able to ask questions about what are your hours? What products do you offer? Where are you located? What's your phone number? What's your website? Things like that it will make it so much smarter than just, oh, please check our website for contact details or any other information. So I think these are some of the things that are going to be really nice moving forward. You have access to all of these slides here. So there is some really nice documentation. The built-in AI, this was announced back in May of 2024 this year, and they are continuing to update it where they just basically said, we're making this available behind Chrome and Chrome Canary and Chrome Dev. There is something called, we already saw this, the early adopter program, but Gemini Nano DeepMind from Google, and it will walk you through all of the capabilities that they are wanting you to have. Not all of them are completely in place yet, but a large amount of them are available either on Chrome or Android for Chrome for the mobile devices, or are coming into place with Gemini Nano. There's also Gemini proper, which is the granddaddy of all of them. But this is some really cool stuff that they're providing to give us out of the box. And then finally, if you have any questions or we're playing with it and got stuck and there's not enough time here, reach out to me, let me know, and I'll end this with any questions you guys might have had. Oh, the slide, where are the slides? Yes, you need to download it. So if you go here, you go to code, download. Once you unzip that, it's going to be under, I'll show you, there's a static folder. If this will come back to me. Come on. And then under resources, there it is. I wanted to make sure all the content that I provided in this talk was there. So any other questions? And I'll give this back to William now. Oh, what is the URL now? Here, let me copy this in the chat again. What was the question? What is the market potential? RAG, man, RAG is going to be amazing. So there is a lot of talk right now or chatter within the environment of people having issues with hallucinations. So you'll ask ChatGPT, and if you're not very specific on your prompt saying, if you do not know the answer, do not respond. We've actually had court cases, legislation, or not legislation, legal cases against attorneys trying to use ChatGPT to come up with precedent. And ChatGPT actually hallucinated and came up with precedent that never existed. It was never in the court in the US. And he filed, or she, I can't remember if it was a he or she, filed this, and the judge threw it out and fined him. And there's now a legal proceeding against OpenAPI because of this. And so what RAG does to the grand scheme of large language models is it helps it control what it knows. And so this is why I'm so excited about Google, because they're going towards what they call expert models. I'm only good at one thing, because if I'm a jack of all trades, I am going to come up with things. And there's this thing called temperature in large language models. You can have a fever just like ChatGPT can. And so you can be as close to as being as honest as possible, or you can have it be as creative as possible. And a lot of things when you're trying to have it do writing, have it do generation, you want it to be creative, like images, songs. But there's other things that you want it to be completely strict and don't want that to happen. So RAG is huge, and we're already seeing it in a lot of places. It takes time for the person to create the data so that you can upload it, which will be the kind of the next session of just talking about the company. But medical will be huge, legal will be huge, just anyone, any vertical, to be honest, anything that you want to be able to interact with and make your life better. An employee handbook, allowing your new employees to ask questions about it. How much vacation do I have? Little things like that you can just upload and have it, and it'll just work. Any books or websites, the links that I have in the download is a good place. I do have some videos too back here to resources. You should watch these videos once you get the slides. They'll kick off and give you a good feel for what it is. And I haven't even touched on LangChain, Hugging Face, and some of the major pieces that play into the very big large language models that companies have been using for now, but it's so expensive when you're actually trying to host it yourself. And my angle to all of this is the fact that I have a lot of clients that don't want it to go to the cloud. They don't want to share with Uncle whoever and Uncle Festus. They want it to be their own data and keep it that way. Hugging Face, LangChain, Llama, use any of those and you're in the cloud is going to be something that's going to be anyone can spoof, anyone can watch it, and they also are training against it. So hopefully you like this, and if you have any questions, feel free to ping me, and just let William know if you want to do the next session.
Matt, that was excellent. That was excellent. That was well done. We are at time. We certainly appreciate your efforts here. I'm excited about the next session. I don't want too much time to go between now and then so that this is all fresh. So I'm going to ping you offline so that we can get something on the calendar. In a day or so, I'm going to have this recording up in the technology industry group, as well as, again, promoting it on the Alignable platform. And I'll follow up with you so that we can get the part 2, scheduled. Yes, this will be posted in the group. This is being recorded. So with that, thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks again, Matt, for your time. I look forward to part 2.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thanks,
Appreciate it.
everybody.